Hello, beloveds. This is Cynthia Borsellino again, and I have my special guest who actually is airs with me on Revived and Restored Building Community. So I said, "Come on to Beloved Unveiled." So this is Valencia Benavides with me today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yep, and we get to spend more time together. I love it.
I
So
know.
it's all
It's
right.
good.
I wanted to share, share kind of the God stories that God's doing in our group a little bit, but we'll share our part of it. But we have a group of women we get together with on Wednesday evenings called Waking Up Gray, and it's about, just kind of exploring the exploration of creative awakening, coming to awaken to the creativity within us that we were created in the image of God, and that as we spend more time with Him, He unlocks those places that were shut down when we were children that I believe every single person on this earth, because we're created in His image, are creative,
Yeah.
and it's just things that we buy into, lies we buy into, things that we do, the structures of the systems of this world that kind of shut off that, in a lot of us. And creativity comes in many forms, but anyway, so it's been fun. And one of the things that I thought that we could share is, like, I have a bunch of rocks here today, and so does Valencia, and all of our group kind of felt led by the Lord because of another women's retreat that I was at, that I got to go to and participate in. Was phenomenal. But kind of, what burdens are we carrying, right?
Yeah.
So what are the burdens that we're carrying that, the Lord says, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. And so, I remember when I first heard that, really, I heard the scripture many times, but I'd never understood, like, what does that really mean? Because, Lord,
Yeah.
life seems really hard, and I'm carrying, like, I feel heavy, weighted down all the time. And I remember him speaking. He said, "Well, that's because they're not my burdens."
Yeah.
And he gently just kind of began to show me that I was carrying things and doing things that weren't of him, right?
Yeah.
And all those. So I thought we could go and share, and I'm praying that through those who are listening today, if you have any, um, I would encourage you to take some rocks and write down kind of the burdens that you're carrying, and carry them around with you. Like, and one of the things I request of the women is, you have to carry these around for the next week. Then we're going to come together and do something with them. But we're going to go and meet out at a lake, so you can kind of imagine what we're going to do. But anyway, so here they are, and I thought maybe we could share a little bit. I'll be vulnerable, and these are different than what I did the last time. So I feel like God's really taking care of some of my not so great residual things that I've not been uh, kind of trusting Him in, or still pondering on, that aren't really of His kingdom. And we all have that. And I'm 65, so it's like it's going to be a continuation till I meet Him, in that place of eternity. Like, and so that's what I'm wanting to do even now, is like, Lord, I want to know that place of eternity where I don't have procrastination. That was one of mine. I
Right.
don't have the fear of lack. I don't have the fear of being forgotten, or being rejected. Rejection was one of my big ones from the time I was little, and God has healed me through a lot of that. But it pops up every once in a while when things in community aren't going the way you thought. And when you don't have those conversations, and
Yeah.
that's somebody's telling me, go and have the conversation with the people. And then my being overweight in my later years, I never thought I'd be at this point, but that's kind of battling through that. Okay, Lord. But you want to share yours, Valencia?
Yeah. So the first one that came to mind for me was just the statement, it's hard. I feel like I hear myself say that a lot. I feel that way a lot.
Yeah, I've heard you say it.
Uh-huh. I
I was
know.
just kidding.
You've called it to mind sometimes.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about perspective shifts.
Mhm.
And I don't, it's not like I want to feel that way,
Mhm.
right? But sometimes we don't know how to shift out of those thoughts, right?
Mhm.
Because it's a belief system that's
Mhm.
been there likely for a long time, right?
Mhm.
So, or associated with certain circumstances in your life or whatever it is. So for me, I don't know that I don't remember feeling that all that much until I was married with
Mm.
kids. So I think it's more associated with this more recent season of life.
Well, and I think it's a cultural thing too, because I hear it so much more. When I was younger, even young married and all that stuff, I didn't hear people talk like that. But the hear it a lot from a lot of people.
Yeah.
It was saying how hard it is, hard. I've heard it a lot more, and I'm like, wonder what that is. Like, why is that? The conversation's been going on for a few years now, right? That
Mhm.
I think a generation that I think it's an attack that the enemy brings in to weigh us down, right?
Yeah. I mean, I remember my mother saying it's the best job, but it's the hardest job.
Oh wow,
And she said that her mother said that too.
wow.
And
So that's generational.
I've heard that from a lot of people actually in my generation. And I think too, like we weren't necessarily like, I think too, like just what happened with women's lib and all the things, like moms went to work outside of the house and it didn't necessarily alleviate their responsibilities at home.
It still doesn't.
And still doesn't.
Yeah.
Right. It still doesn't.
Mhm.
And so what that looks like as far as balance and burden carrying, I mean,
Mhm.
you know,
Yep.
there's something to
Yeah.
that socially
Mhm.
that happened whenever I was young, right? So those things were just
Interesting, yep.
happening. And so there was potentially an imbalance. There's also a major rise in divorce, which meant there were single mothers, which I grew up with. So I think that contributes some of that
Yeah.
too. And again, an imbalance. So these are not
Mhm.
God's, like this is not Jesus's plan for
No.
things, right? To be imbalanced like
Yeah.
that.
But that's a good perspective too, that your mom was a single mom as well. Because
Yeah.
because you're alone. Like
Yeah.
you're supposed to have a partner raising your family and your kids, and how difficult is that, right?
Yeah.
It's just kind of tough. I didn't even think of that. My mom and dad divorced after I was 19. So, but for my brothers, they probably have a different, and they do think life's really hard. So isn't that interesting? I never even thought about it that way.
Yeah.
But
So, and I mean, a lot of that time, like she remarried, but
Mhm.
that did not ease the hardness for her
No.
because there was a whole nother set of issues that went with all that, which is for another show.
Yeah.
But I think that that's probably my biggest one. It was the one that stood out. It was the one, I mean, anger and fear, and I feel like there's a lack of joy. I think all of those things are in the mix, absolutely. But that one I think is probably a big one
That's
for
probably
me.
one of your
I think so.
well. And maybe all these other ones kind of come because they kind of feed off of each other. I've
Yeah, they
noticed all
do.
my stuff.
They
like-
work in
Yeah.
in relation to each other, don't they?
Yeah, because I'm looking at mine and goes like, yeah, this is kind of like all feeding off of each other.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, I
Not
think
in a good
like,
way either.
yeah, but I feel like
But
that's sort
part
of
of life,
how
yeah.
how things work, right?
Mhm. But it's interesting. I think it gets stronger and stronger if you don't face it, right? And I've worked, I've gone into nursing homes too and talked with people that are in there, and just the conversations of how over time the bitterness will grow and grow and grow and grow
Right.
until Jesus can come on the scene and help take these burdens, right? And how does he do that? I think that's
Yeah.
how do we let him take these? And so we have to be tired of carrying these things around.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I thought, I had to take it. I've had it in my pocket. I've had them in my pocket today. And I mean, it's like pulling on your pocket, pulling on your pants. Your pants feel like they're falling down. Like it's really inconvenient. Or you have it in your back pocket of your jeans, which has enough structure to the jean that it's not pulling your pants down. But then like if you need to sit down, then there's these things that you're sitting on. So you have to move it. And then I went to get in my car and I was like, well, what do I do with them now? Like, I don't really, if it's a burden, you're not taking it off your person. So I sat with it on my lap while I drove.
Mhm.
And then when I turned, it fell into the floor. So the burden was gone, but it made a huge crash as they like clanked together and hit the ground. And I thought they will make themselves known, like regardless, right?
Yeah.
And I just
They're
thought,
still there.
oh
They're still
yeah,
hanging
even
around.
if they're not on you, like the
Mhm.
weight of it you're not feeling, they're announcing themselves. And I feel
Mhm.
like that's how burdens
That's
are.
so good. That's a good revelation of that. When I did it, it was just a couple of days that we had. She said that we had to carry them. We were not allowed. So if we went on a walk or whatever we're doing, we had to carry them, and we couldn't put them in like someone would trying to put it in their, bra, whatever. Like no, you can't do that either. Like put your phone there or your money, whatever people do that. No, can't do any of that. So it was kind of and it was difficult. Like, yeah, you can't function really well with them, right?
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is that when we're carrying things that were never meant for us to carry, and then it's like, well, how do you get out of that?
Right.
Like, what's something tangible? Like, how do we get out of that? How do we stop carrying these burdens that Jesus doesn't want us to have? How do we do that? So we are gonna process through this, and I'm hoping that some of you who are listening, that go take some rocks and write down the burdens you're carrying, and carry around with this next week with you,
Yeah.
for yourself, and asking the Lord. So one of the things we're doing with all these is we have little cards that we're going to write down, asking the Lord, what does this mean?
Mm-hmm.
What does this mean to the Lord? Each of these words, what do they all mean, right? And then asking him, his view of it, and how does he view us in that, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of getting more intentional, and really pressing in with Jesus to say, how can we take these burdens and hand them over to you? What does that look like?
Yeah.
And why am I holding on to it so tightly? Like, why do I not want to let go of procrastination? Why do I not want to let go of rejection? Why do I not want to let go of fear of lack or being forgotten? Why would I want to hold on
Yeah.
to
How
those?
is that serving you?
Yeah.
Because there's a place, right, where all those
Mhm.
things get picked up that at some point in your life, it served you well.
They serve me in the sense of, I don't know, staying in my pride, to say, or keeping me uncomfortable. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean,
Like,
it gives it, like, it legitimizes certain things, makes
mhm.
you feel maybe heard, or I
Yeah.
don't know what it is.
I don't need it. I'm like, but here we
Exactly.
are. Like, what is it? So we're going to process. So we're not through this whole thing yet, but
Yeah.
we're saying we want you to be on the journey with
Yeah.
us. So I'm asking each of you who are listening to be on that journey with us, and reach out to me at belovedunveiled@protonmail.com, at protonmail.com. And we're going to see where the Lord takes each of us, and we're going to
Yep.
connect more. The next week we'll share more and see what God uncovers for each of us. And I'd love to hear from you. And any last words too, Valencia, you want to kind of?
I don't think so. I'm just looking forward to seeing what is revealed, because
Yes.
I've felt the weight of it all, but I don't know how to fix
Yeah.
that.
And
So
and the Lord is
excited.
going to unveil himself through all this to us, to understand who he is even more, so that we can live freely and living in his burden, which is light, and his